to talk to you about patenting something. I need my intellectual property protected. Then I'll say, hey, I got just the guy for you, Rod Blair. And if you want to know more about Rod, you can read about him in the current business journal that recently came out. So Rod has 8 patents, 6 different companies. He's been an inventor pretty much all of his life. So when we get somebody who calls, obviously they talk to Rod if they're looking for intellectual property. Some of our webinars, the one today wasn't the most exciting. It was on micro lending, so it was on loans for generally about 100,000 and less. Our last one, we had a partner in the law firm of Jones Day in Washington, D.C., and he spoke about managing.
Big firm. I don't think I missed that one.
Did you?
Yeah.
That was one of the better ones.
The one on
managing
like
intangible
intangible assets. No, I used part of that for here, and I did listen to it, but I didn't. I think I missed his intro. I didn't realize he was from Jones Day. Cool.
Yeah, he's an adjunct at Georgetown University and a graduate of the University of Maryland. So it was on, and it's an interesting phenomenon what's happened in business over the last 40 years. 40 years ago, we were a manufacturing base, and companies had tangible assets. They had desks, they had chairs, they had furniture, fixtures, they had equipment, they had rolling stock. They had all kinds of crap like that. You know, now you look at our biggest companies around, and what are they? They're Google, they're Apple, they're Microsoft, and almost all of their assets are held in
intangible assets.
Thank you. That's it. So it's not tangible. It's not the beauty of their business. But what we are finding is that also holds true with our small businesses now. Is that sure you can have your assets that you need to operate the business, your physical assets, but also it's those intangible assets that are really making up a big part of the balance sheet these days.
What are the majority of your requests from clients?
Money. Or excuse me, it's not money. It's money, 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 money. It's capital to actually start your small business.
So basically, you have a percentage in terms of what they're spending the capital on. But so what do they need the capital for?
They need it for a variety of reasons. They need it to start up their business. They need it for expansion. They need it because maybe the last 2 years they've experienced some type of setback, and they need funding in order to keep their business going. Oftentimes they'll need it to expand. That's what we like to see, a nice expanding business. We're located off campus downtown, a block south of the Padre, in a building I like to call the Mid-State Development Building. And Mid-State Development they do a very specific loan program called the SBA 504 program. And they do 30-something loans a year on businesses that are looking to expand and buy a business, or excuse me, buy a building. So they might be renting right now. Sorry, I'm a morning person. You know, this late night stuff is, you know, in my book, this is bug, but you know, that's me. So if I if I misspeak a few times, I'm gonna blame it on that. Even though it might have been the beer I had with my chili Reno for dinner. Hey, what you see is what you get, and you get honesty here. So what they do is they do the 504 loan program, and what it does is it allows businesses that are growing, because businesses are growing all the time, and we have business owners come in, and you'll see a successful business, and they'll look at their Schedule C on their tax return, and it will show that last year they made $143,000. And about every one of them do not have that $143,000 in cash. They don't have it in the bank. They've been growing their business, so what they're doing is they're adding staff, so they're having a need for permanent working capital. If they have inventory, then it's going toward that. It's going for other materials and equipment in order to expand that business. It's not cash that they're retaining, even though they're paying income tax on it. If they're working on the high-speed rail project, which some of our contractors are now starting to do. The state of California has a preference. If you're a certified small business with the state of California, you get paid quickly. So quickly to them is 45 days. Is that quick to everybody else? If you work wages for a week, do you think it's quickly if your employer pays you 45 days later?
No.
So essentially what they're doing is they're asking you to provide this level of working capital. You have 20 employees that are doing a construction project, you're paying them for 6.5 weeks. You're providing the material, you're providing equipment, you're paying the fuel, you have your overhead. You're paying your taxes. And all that money isn't coming in for 45 more days. So that is how small businesses grow. So back to my analogy on how that loan program works is it only allows you to put down 10% to get into commercial real estate. In a commercial real estate job, normal conditions, it's probably 25 to 30% of what a bank's gonna wanna see. So you can get into it a lot cheaper. You also get a low interest rate. I mean, we know where mortgage rates have been in the last, however, 3 or 4%. But to see business rates and business money at 4-point-something% is unreal. And it's been staying there, so to answer your question on windbag fashion is that it's money. It's capital to grow your business is number one.
What would you secure a permanent working capital loan with?
Hopefully nothing. Well, there's ways to, there's uncollateralized working capital loans out there. If you're an existing business, you can get a line of credit. And oftentimes line of credits are unsecured. But if you don't have it, because banks will come in here and they'll tell you, and if he brings a banker in here, you know, I guarantee you he'll use.
By the way,
but this money's from you though,
this
right?
is a
This
banker.
money from the
Slightly trick
PSBC.
question.
You know what you're gonna tell me, is you're gonna tell me you're a cash flow lender.
No. I'm not.
Okay. Never mind. 4 out of 5 bankers will come in here and tell you that they're a cash flow lender, that they lend on cash flow. Now, by saying that, they're still gonna go off of their 5 Cs of credit, which collateral is gonna be on. But an unsecured permanent working capital, it's out there.
What dollar amount would you say that?
100 grand and less. Today on our webinar, we had Fresno CDFI, which stands for an acronym for Community Development Financial Institution. They do it. And we had Valley EDC out of Van Nuys, which actually borrowed a little bit of money, about $2 million from Rabobank at a very favorable rate, and now they're lending it out in Kern County, and have been. So, but you know, it's not easy. I mean, there's a lot of secured lines, unsecured lines of credit that happen. Maybe not so much now than there was a few years ago. But if you have cash flow, lenders are going to look at that cash flow first, and that's your source of repayment in many of their views.
Trick, are you raising your hand again?
Yeah, so if you don't look at cash flows, is, I guess, the security based on the credit of the owner? Or to what extent do you have to have some sort of foundation to get an unsecured loan?
Well, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to how our banking system is set up. In Europe, it's completely different. In Europe, the banks are more of a risk-taking, it's more of a risk-taking system. In the United States, we have deposits that are secured by a federal entity, the FDIC. So the FDIC is securing, is it still up to like 100,000 where it's been forever? 250 now. So they'll secure up to 250. And what they do is, but by doing that, what they do is they come in and they look at your records. And not only do they look at your records, they look at the loans that are drawn up. And they look for collateral in those loans because they realize the security of that bank, if it doesn't maintain its solvency, that they have to come in and bail it out. And so they have rules, they have a lot of rules that they throw in there. So let's use that as kind of the backdrop. And I use that a lot to explain because we get a lot of people who come in and they'll say, gee, the banks won't lend anything. Well, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond their shareholders. They're owned by shareholders. And their shareholders want a rate of return. They have examiners that they have to look at. And they have certain financial ratios that they have to hit as far as remaining solvent. So that's the first thing. And our banking system isn't set up for that. If you want a more riskier type investment, we have, if you have a more riskier type, there's plenty of opportunity out there. There's more opportunity than ever. So there's a lot of alternatives that are out there. The thing to remember is that, we come from a period to where we had a very serious financial meltdown 7 years ago that about cost everything. It was touch and go. And before that, we had a savings and loan crisis in probably the late 80s, early 90s, where examiners would go into savings and loans and they would find cocktail napkins with promissory notes on them. And don't get me wrong, I would love to, get a business loan, and a cocktail at the same time. But it really doesn't make really good business sense. And if, again, it's the taxpayers that are asked to bear the brunt of it, there's a bank that fails. So that's a little bit about the background of now I set it up nicely, but I forgot your question.
So, if I were to walk into your shop and ask for an unsecured loan, would you look at my credit, or what would you look at as criteria?
For an unsecured credit line, first of all, we don't make loans. We know who does make loans. We generally know what their criteria is. But for an unsecured credit line, what you're gonna need is you're gonna need cash flow. You're gonna need to show some nice, consistent history of tax returns over the last 3 years. One of the big things that's changed over the last 7 years or so is that essentially commercial lenders are getting out of lending to small business. Now, I'm saying that more so on an aggregate national level, of which there was a nice story on the front page of the Wall Street Journal a couple of months that verified this and said that they're losing a lot of market share to people like online lenders and other places. And, some of the big banks, your big guys, I don't think they frankly care. So.
Doesn't SBA guarantee some of these loans though, or is that those different programs?
SBA does provide a loan guarantee to banks. So, but it's basically on a loan that the bank generally wouldn't do. So they provide that extra incentive in order to make that deal. So, the borrower comes in and oftentimes they don't even know about the guarantee until they get hit with a 2 to 4% guarantee fee at the beginning of the loan. So there's a fee involved with that from the get-go. But, the guarantee program, particularly a program called the SBA 7A loan, is a loan that goes back for many, many years. And you're a much better chance of getting one of those unless you're established and have a long history of cash flow with one of the local community banks, which has been the case for a while. So SBA, how that program works is that, let's say I go in and get a loan for $500,000. I'm pretty happy I can get a $500,000 loan. The bank then, what they do is they say, well, we probably wouldn't make this loan if we didn't get that guarantee, so we're going to run it through SBA. SBA charges the guarantee fee that's up front, and then there's other loan fees that are kind of typical. And then what happens is the bank gets an 80% or 85% guarantee depending on the program. So essentially, you taxpayers are guaranteeing that I will repay that loan. And if I don't, and all the conditions are met, and the file's in good order, and everything's up to date, they go out and they seek the collateral. They get a UCC1 filing, which is Universal Commercial Code, which pretty much wraps up all the assets that somebody can go in and grab. Bank loans are Small business loans are done on the premise that they're made on the premise that you're gonna fail. And if you understand that going in and you don't have a problem, you don't have a chip on your shoulder about it, some people do, then it's fine. But that's just the way, going back to how our banking system is. So the guarantee is for 80–85%, whatever. The bank's on the hooks for me, say that it's an 80% guarantee. They're on the hook for 20% of 500,000. They're on the hook for 100,000. So there's the incentive to try to make those loans. Small business customers are oftentimes good customers. You know, they have a lot of cash that rolls in the bank that can be used for other purposes. So that's the point behind that.
Follow-up question, sorry, beating a dead horse.
Go ahead.
So let's say-
I said I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Okay, last question. Let's say that small borrower fails, does the bank foreclose or sell the collateral first and then come after the guarantee, or do they give the guarantee first and then try to recoup the rest through the collateral?
You know, at the Small Business Development Center, we've had so few deals go bad that we don't usually see that. And since we're not a lender, we're not involved in that anyway. We're involved usually on the front end. My speculation would be that they work closely with, and I know that there were a lot of workouts done during the last credit mess. My speculation would be that they'll work with you. I mean, if you have a way of repaying them and you have your principal residence as collateral, you know, they'll structure it to where they get their money back if there's a way to do that, if there's enough in ample collateral. Usually there's probably not. So there's a lot of different ways that they would probably try to work with you, but they wouldn't work with you if it cost them money. And they have to do that to satisfy the agreement on that guarantee. So they have to pursue that.
Lacey?
Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
It's, if you wanna keep going on finance, how are ACA requirements affecting the requests that you see come in and kind of the future industry or trend that's gonna come with small businesses due to the requirements placed upon them?
Well, right now, most of the people we see have less than 50 employees. And so really the threshold that you're hitting with ACA is 50 and over. I think it's something that's going to happen more frequently as we move on. But right now, you know, I think what I see right now is you see people, or at least you hear people tell you, if they're around the 50 employee mark, they're gonna stay under 50. And that's true also when they talk about a $15 minimum wage and things like that. So there are certain points to where they will do what they can to stay under, and maybe that's trying to subcontract out functions. Maybe they subcontract out HR or other functions like that. So you hear that. We don't see a lot of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of that's happening, because I think there are some ways of when it's really hitting right now that 50 number. So if you're right around 50, that's the sweet spot on that.
I just wasn't sure because you do have to include seasonal labor, which a lot of people thought you originally didn't have to. So I know that there were some small businesses that would allow their employee cap to exceed the 50 during certain times of the year, and it's now kind of coming back and biting them because those employees have to be considered in your formula.
See, and I'm not sure how the formula works, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. Because you'd have the seasonal where it fluctuates, but then you would also have turnover that affects it also. So I honestly don't know how that works. We haven't ran into it with enough clients.
Subcontractor seasonal to avoid that whole problem.
We should be careful on his filing.
Yeah, and you gotta watch out for how you use subcontractors, because as more people do that, then the IRS is going to get more aggressive in that area. And really, who's more aggressive right now anyway on looking at the 20 steps of what constitutes a subcontractor rather than an employee is the EDD. And whereas many of our small businesses might get hit with an IRS audit, the one they fear the most if they have retail sales, is a Board of Equalization audit on sales tax. Because sales tax laws are just so, you know, you'd have to really have somebody on staff in order to get them all right. Either that or you'd have to be really, really good. So, you know, generally when a sales tax auditor comes in, generally they pull more money than the IRS federal income tax auditor. When you would think that it would be the other way around because they're probably paying more in income tax than they are in sales tax.
You mentioned earlier that banks, I guess, believe there's this assumption that most small businesses will fail. What percentage do?
Well, you know, to get a bank loan generally, it starts with the banker you're working with. So that first person can say no. If, you know, the banker that you're working with, and this is all subjective, and you're working with them and they like your idea, he visualizes your plan, he sees the numbers, the debt coverage ratios, you know, there's a lot of numbers involved too, but if everything flies nicely, then what they do is they either go to either a loan committee or a credit administrator, or who knows, both. And so selling it to that first person doesn't get you a loan. What it does is it buys you a ticket to the next level, to where then it receives a little more scrutiny. So, but that's the process. And, you know, did I answer your question?
Kind of, I was looking for.
If it was 8:30 in the morning, I would be answering.
At an aggregate level, what percentage would you say of small businesses that actually fail in the first?
See, I don't think they don't make loans thinking you're gonna fail. They make loans to protect themselves in case you fail. And I think that's a whole different perspective.
So two follow-up questions that I have, so I'll ask them separately. But why do most small businesses fail, in your experience?
They run out of money. Now, there's a lot of reasons why they run out of money. But they fail because they run out of money. Or as I like to say, they run out of cash. The lenders today on our micro lend panel, one of them has a 5 C's of credit. And, you know, it's essentially really quickly, it's character. Character's a big deal, but it doesn't get you a small business loan. And then there is character, there's collateral, there's capital, there's the condition of your business or industry, and the last one is capacity. And so basically there's one banker had 5 C's, the next one had 3 C's, which were just 3 of those. And then I'm sitting there and I go, we only have 1 C. And he said, well, what's that? That's cash. It's getting cash for our clients. So it's subjective, but you know, there's a lot of alternatives out there. There's more so than ever. And the best one's just about to happen. Anybody know what happens on May 16th?
Equity crowdfunding?
Cheater.
Negative interest rate. That might do it, negative interest rate.
No, he was right.
Equity crowdfunding.
Ask if anybody knows what that is.
They should, we talked about it.
Okay, no. See, that's why I wanted you to ask instead of me. That and your voice is booming and mine's just. So
Part of your style.
So equity crowdfunding is a game changer in my opinion. And it's a game changer on both fronts. There's gonna be some education. It's not gonna scale as quickly as some people think, but it's a game changer. And it's a game changer for startup businesses, it's a game changer for projects, and also existing businesses that wanna grow. Really where you've seen a lot of growth the last 5 years is with online lenders. And, you know, online lenders have their niche, and essentially what it is you come into our office, sit down and say, gosh, if I can get $250,000 in 5 days, I can buy out my competitor. And it's, you ask a question like, well, what's your competitor's business worth? And he goes, I don't know, but his land and building's worth $500,000. And so if you could basically come up with, and generally you're not gonna get a deal like that, it's gonna be something a little less dramatic. But you have people that have a need for cash in five days. You mentioned there were some lenders in our room?
Yeah, I mean, Eric, first and foremost, is a bank
Eric,
VP.
Eric, by coming in with that scenario, can you get me a loan in 5 days?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. I can guarantee you his rates are gonna be probably about 5 times, the online rates are gonna be about 5 times higher. And they're gonna take their payment out every single day. And kind of puts a bind on cash flow because they generally want their money not in a reasonable term of 5 or 7 years on a transaction like that, but in 3 or maybe even 18 months. So you're gonna be paying it back quickly, but if it's something that actually is a heck of a deal, it's worth doing. So, but there's a lot of people that are getting tied into these things now, and they're not understanding the full ramifications of the cash flow that it has on their business. I mean, loans are meant to be amortized over the life of their assets that you're purchasing, mostly like everything else. You buy a house, you amortize it over 15 or 30 years. A car, you're gonna probably have that car, you know, anywhere between 3 and 5, maybe 7 years. So why would you get a $500,000 loan and try to pay it off in 18 months? Sounds great, I have being debt free or free of that debt in 18 months, but the ramifications of that cash coming out of your checking account every single day have a negative drawback on a lot of factors. But back to equity crowdfunding, the reason I think it's a game changer is because it's a good perspective on both sides of the fence. Number one, we had actually hoped the SEC didn't come out until the date until like a week ago Monday, and we thought it was going to be closer to March 1st. And we have a client that we've worked with that actually makes a productivity tool for physicians that's online, basically a $50 billion market. He's looking to get 1% of that market, and he's got basically the product that's the best product that's out there right now. Now, being in a mature or at least maturing market, you have issues such as people are trained on their particularly productive tool. So, you know, back in the day when, well, I guess there's nobody as old as me in here, but when I'd go to the doctor, you'd see the little handheld transcriber, and the physician would take notes afterwards. Somebody would end up transcribing in shorthand or typing those out or whatever. And then what would happen is that would go into your file. Well, now it's 2016, and this productivity tool has drop-down screens of the entire body. You make a few clicks on what's wrong. The patient walks out with a 2 to 3 page synopsis of what's happened, of what their condition is. One copy goes to the file automatically if they push the button, and a physician's time that used to spend, and I had a physician in my office about 2 months ago, and he works for one of the California state prisons in Kern County. And he told me that between the prep and the follow-up paperwork, his average day, he spent 4 hours doing that. Using this tool, he would spend 0 because he would be done with each of that by the time, maybe a little bit of prep before he saw the clients or the patients or the inmates or whatever they call them. But basically, at the end of everything, he'd hit one button after using some drop-down menus, acute pain, knee, that go into the knee and it explodes out. It's a pretty incredible device. So anyway, we were set to go with an equity crowdfunding campaign, and we'll probably do it anyway. We've raised money for him. He's on the cloud now, he's launching, but he's trying to crack a maturing market that actually has people that are used to what they have, and they're reluctant to change. We think that he's gonna get his 1% and succeed, and I think he'll probably scale maybe a little higher than that, but you know, for me, from my standpoint, I sit back and I think, okay, I'm not gonna try to sound too cocky here, but I know a little bit about small businesses, and I have a little bit of retirement money and some other money maybe to play with, and it's sitting over here, and these Wall Street investors are putting it in God knows what. And so if I can take a part of that I'm gonna invest in small caps or small businesses, this gives me the opportunity now to invest in the next Facebook. Whereas I didn't have this before, and I don't have it now, I have it on May 16th. So it's an opportunity for investors, and it's an opportunity to capitalize good small business projects. Now, a lot of people will get upset when they come in and see us because, you know, they think that every small business idea and every project should be funded, and that could be farther than the truth. There's a lot of crappy ideas that people walk around with, trust me. And that's why we have 15 to 20 consultants, so they can tell them instead of me. So that's what's going on, that's new in funding, and it's gonna be exciting. It's basically, you know, you look at GM and, okay, GM might have different classes of stock. In equity crowdfunding, you're gonna have one class, you're gonna have a common stock. And then you have to hold it for at least a year before you can trade it, but the next thing that's gonna pop up is going to be third-party online trading of these stocks. And they're already in the works. You know somebody that's gonna be doing that,
I
right?
do, actually. The guest lecturer that I tentatively have planned to speak to you guys on Skype either March 7th or March 9th is another buddy of mine from high school besides Brian, who right now runs a third-party like secondary market for venture capital, angel investments and stuff. Right now, he's still under the restrictions that you have to be a qualified investor. You have to meet certain like relatively high income and asset rules and stuff in order to have access to this stuff. But I'm sure as soon as that deadline comes up, Todd's platform expands considerably. So yes, he's going to be talking to them later on in the quarter, towards the end of the quarter. Can I take the conversation in like two more directions to make sure you touch on them before? Okay, never mind.
Maybe I'll take it one right now, but I wanted to make sure there weren't any other financing, funding, capitalization of business questions or anything before we left that.
I think these are good, so if there are, please, let's stay there.
What are the two things you wanted to talk about?
Well, first of all, was segueing off the topic of equity crowdfunding to crowdfunding in general. You just got done being part of the Edible Garden meeting yesterday, but we've got a second crowdfunding project in here, Mad Inc., which is one of Jay's clients, and I thought it would benefit those students as well as everybody else in here, because even if they're not working on a crowdfunding project, sooner or later,
Kickstarter is so 2011.
non-equity crowdfunding is going to be relevant as well.
Okay.
So if you could talk a little bit about maybe would you rather like segue off of this kind of the tips for success that we talked about yesterday with the
Wouldn't you rather
the
talk
other
about
project,
the
or-
business model generation canvas and the lean business startup methodologies?
is that what you would rather talk about?
I don't know.
Well,
How many of you have heard of the business model generation canvas? Yeah, this is what I want to talk about. How many of you have heard of crowdfunding, donation and rewards-based crowdfunding? How many of you contributed to a crowdfunding campaign? How many of you contributed to a successful crowdfunding campaign? How many of you have a son who's got $20,000 off a Kickstarter campaign?
Mine only got like 10.
I won. Well, good. Let's talk about your campaign.
Mine was a complete joke. I just wanted to make everybody laugh.
Now I'm laughing.
Not as bad as the potato salad guy.
potato salad guy.
Heard about that.
The guy who wanted to make potato salad and put his wanted a recipe or something, and he was gonna come up with the best recipe, put it on Kickstarter, and just raised like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then people tried to copy it, nobody was successful, that was the funny part. I wanna make macaroni salad. So,
Crickets chirping for that one.
it was. Yeah, it was pretty funny when you'd see the campaigns and they'd just be like on 0. And it was like 2 weeks later. So, it's your class, what do you wanna talk about?
I would like a little bit of feedback for the matting team. Do you guys wanna kind of?
He's the man.
I've read, I've now read like your like project plan. I have some questions for later about like the actual like workload and deadlines for the word of mouth rollout and some of the campaign and stuff. But do you want to describe briefly to Kelly, like, I think Kelly's less familiar with the client than Jay, but kind of describe where things are at and ask any questions you'd like of him. Kelly's been successful raising, you and your son raised 20 grand to fund a food truck. So basically, he knows what it takes to be successful with that.
A food
I'd be
truck in its
interested.
first year had celebrity chef Alton Brown sign the front of the truck when he visited it. And 2 weeks ago had Guy Fieri and Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives filming in 1 year.
What is in this food truck?
What's
Where's
that? His food truck's up in Modesto, and it's basically a gourmet sandwich truck. The signature dish is called a pork strami, which is pastrami that's made out of pork instead of beef.
What made the crowdfunding successful as far as the food trucks? Like what?
A lot of work, creative suggestions as far as rewards, having a wide depth of rewards, coming in and adding rewards during the campaign, adding some surprises along the way when the campaign started, such as another guy a friend of his who had been on the Food Network. He gave him an e-recipe book that had like 8 or 12 recipes in it for people that gave over $35. Just little things like that. That and just being persistent and really working the crowd. At the SBDC, we tell people, and we've worked with some successful crowdfunding campaigns in town, and we tell them that the one thing you have to have is you have to have the crowd. If you don't have that crowd, we can't get it for you. So it's really working your network, and it really spins out of friends and family. Unless you have a product. If you have a product to sell that has an interesting niche, or not, the product actually can be a pre-sale.
So, for matting, the two people who own this company, Brad and Carol, I would describe them as quirky.
I would agree with that
It was
description.
quirky. So
I like quirky.
Yeah, I mean, they're in these buildings that are over 100 years old, and they're just kind of, sort of seems like flying by the seat of their pants. This is a hobby for them that they're trying to turn into something that will support them living up in Randsburg permanently. So, we're going to be doing crowdfunding. We're using meetups to get contact information for other people in the industry. We plan on doing flyers, contacting local vendors that support that type of industry. But when we started to think as a group on what can we do that's going to spark interest for people who maybe aren't off-roaders, we kind of came up with a promotional plan, and I feel like the class was out. So they have these two mannequins, and they're two female mannequins, and they have huge breasts in front of the store, like they're massive. And so when we're in the store and we're shopping, one of the products they sell are underwear, and they're various colors like pink, green, yellow, green, and they say I ride on the butt cheeks. So what they do is, in Randsburg, there's only 35 people there. There's no police, there's nothing.
Is that really the population of Randsburg?
It's
35? I love it.
We have two clients in Randsburg, by the way.
Do you? I said Carol.
I'm just glad it didn't blow up with Johannesburg with that one guy up there.
Oh, he wants to call it Radsburg, like that's his plan.
Really? He wants to change the name of the town to Bradford?
It essentially was to monopolize the town, but is what they do is at the end of the weekend or during the course of the weekend, if it started off as being women, but it's kind of transitioned into a male thing, which is probably more appropriate. If a man comes in and they're willing to wear the underwear across the street wearing their biker gear, like their hats and their helmets and their boots, then they get to keep the underwear for free. So as part of our GoFundMe, which we still are waiting back to hear as far as what we can offer to incentivize people to donate, but we were thinking that if you do let's say $30, you get a pair of I Ride Maddie underwear, and if you're spunky enough to post a picture of you wearing your underwear with the hashtag Mad Inc. or Resurrect Randsburg, then we'll send you another pair for free. So what the plan is that we can kind of make this a fad within the biking community, so then people it can be kind of that fun thing, like you think of the ASL Ice Bucket Challenge, not saying it has to get on that scale, but if we're gonna try to raise, let's say 50,000 by the end of the year, having people talk about it is probably really good about doing that. So it's kind of what we're thinking. We haven't had the chance to speak with Brad about his thoughts on that.
He's being fairly unresponsive. Via email, via phone calls, can't get the
Just
guy.
keep after him. I mean, the dude's got a day job from Monday through Friday, you know?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
So,
But he.
I think I'm not saying he shouldn't be more responsive,
No,
but like we have to deal with the level of responsiveness that we
I
have,
get it.
whether it's ideal or not.
Mhm.
I like it. I like the idea. What do you think, Kelly?
Fantastic.
is
Well,
what we're-
she's, go ahead.
but yeah,
What do
it's
you
what
do
we're
with
trying to do
rewards?
is I'm sorry?
What are you thinking about doing with rewards or?
So.
That was one of the rules.
Yeah, that was one of them. So we were gonna, we have a list of things that we would request. Actually, when we
I think
mentioned the
everybody
bricks,
probably sells
we
products.
suggested that, you donate $500 and you can get a plaque, permanently put on the wall, things like that. We haven't received confirmation that that's approved.
I think if I can like paraphrase Kayleen for a second, Matt Inc.'s a t-shirt accessory shop. They got all kinds of stuff they could be selling as part of the giveaways.
I
But
even know.
Brad, the owner's got to say yes. And right now, the owner's working at the machine shop that he works at every week, so he hasn't gotten back to them. But have you been up there? Have you seen their stuff at all? I mean, Jay's the one that's the
In Randsburg?
yeah.
I've been to Randsburg a few times.
But Mad Inc., you're not all that familiar with them?
Isn't there a Mad Inc. off of 58? If you drive down 58, going east?
Yeah, I think
Mad
they're
Dogs.
tattoo things.
Okay.
It's different. This is
Yeah.
they got a lot of clearly they've got a lot of product there, and they get a certain amount of traffic from the hardcore off-road crowd.
We're gonna be a lot of bikers at Whiskey Flats this weekend.
Well, so that was one of the questions that we had asked. So we know that there's various events throughout the year, especially with the meetups. There's one in Los Angeles or something.
Well, yeah, a lot of the meetups are in San Diego.
Mm.
But it's 1,200 members in that, so if you can somehow get one person there to promote to all these groups of people, that opens the door to who knows how many people that aren't even aware, and they might be going right in Randsburg anyway. So, like I said, we still haven't heard back, but that was kind of what we were thinking.
I like it.
Find
Yeah.
something tailor-made.
There's actually,
That's-
go ahead.
No,
Dave,
it's
sorry.
just the culture, basically, of
Yeah,
these two.
there's actually quite a few meetups down south for dirt bikes.
For off-riders?
Yeah.
Cool.
There's probably.
I like it. I think practically
You
speaking,
can't go to all of them.
practically speaking, we need to recruit friends and champions. We need to recruit champions in Southern California, so one of us doesn't have to go down to every single one of those meetups. It'd be fun to go if it works, but obviously everybody here has day jobs as well, and it's easiest if you're going to a meetup that's somewhere doable in an evening without having to go out of your way.
Yeah, and lots of these things too, once we kind of get the plan established, these are things that we can ask Brad and Carol also to help support. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of us that's going and doing this, but there are a handful of events. And of course, they've got their big Halloween weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, and then they have the Western Days in September. And they're saying that they 5,000 visitors that come on the day throughout that weekend. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of potential there, it's just making sure people know that they're there.
Cool. I like it. I mean, what other? Well, first of all, was that clear what the reward was and everything?
Yeah, you get a mannequin with
No, not the mannequin,
You
just,
don't get,
just the shorts.
although Julian.
I was trying to think of a joke, but I thought I better just stop.
You don't know, alright?
Sometimes the brakes work around here.
Yeah, and I mean, from a professional standpoint, the way that these people aren't cookie cutter, they're certainly not square. They're wanting something that's going to stimulate people to think about their business. So I feel like something that's kind of out, that would be kind of random and something that would appeal to them. So, and
So
they're gonna
basically,
trial it first.
yeah, so
They're gonna do the
basically we're
pilot.
thinking about doing that and putting it on the page.
On the GoFundMe.
On the GoFundMe page, people could see that and they're like, these dudes, they're just.
And it'd be fun if you had
I like it.
some fun music and then you had videos of maybe people dancing. So Karina and I have nominated the men in our group to go ahead and do it. So if anyone else feels like joining in, but we think that if we can get that going and we can expand on that, it's an easy way to get even just with the hashtags, getting that to do.
Good.
Kelly, do you have any other general comments or advice on seeing Mad Inc. be successful to the maximum extent possible with their campaign?
I need to learn more about it
Okay.
before I have some more specific ideas.
It's a really interesting case study. We didn't know what to expect when we got out there because it takes an hour and a half to get there. And we were thinking we'd sit down with the owners, have an hour discussion. We ended up spending like 6 hours in Randsburg just getting to know the people that are there and the owners, and it's very
It's
very
so,
neat.
yeah, it's so niche up there that there's just basically one demographic that we can look for. But it has to be in such a mass number in order to be successful.
So
You know, it's dirt lappers, it's off-roaders, and
And they ride right into town.
anybody riding through town, maybe a couple buses here or there, you know,
You
tourists
know,
going
to some
Death
degree,
Valley.
they do that in California City too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the feedback that we did ask from Brad and for Carol are that we had like a list of events that are, or I don't know, events or conventions that are specifically tailored towards that industry. And we asked if there were any within, let's say, a 200-mile radius that we didn't see because none of us are familiar with it. So we were hoping to get more feedback as far as expanding just the ability for us to get in front of more people, but again, kind of on that.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the big news for Randsburg though, in the last few weeks, is that they're getting high-speed internet. Broadband is coming to Randsburg and Johannesburg and
Like
Red
really,
Mountain.
really good high-speed internet.
Really good and really cheap. You can get 25 megabits for probably $25 a month.
That could be a selling point, come into our store and log into our Wi-Fi.
You can get a gig. You can get a gig for. You can get a gig for like $60 a month. Businesses might be higher though. Sorry.
That could
Yeah,
be.
we've been having a good time with it so far. It was unexpected. It went from being a case study to being something that's pretty fun actually. So we're going back in 2 weeks.
I think I saw that there's a conference call with Brad on
I've been trying to
Saturday, right?
confirm that for a couple days, but, he's just.
I wouldn't be surprised if you had to play it by ear
Yeah.
and get the dude to answer his freaking phone on Saturday.
Right.
And then say, Brad, you know, we've been trying to catch you. I know, like, we finally caught your attention. How about now?
Right.
Or how about in about 3 hours? You may not get confirmation until Saturday, but
Right.
if possible, I've got a few things going on, but once you hear from him, like even if it's spur of the moment, loop me in too. I'm psyched to hear what's going on and contribute whatever I can. You can just like add my phone number to the list of ones to conference in.
And just for a slightly different opinion, if Brad wants any support for not having his phone on Saturday, he can call me. Not on Saturday, albeit, but he can call me.
I
get
think
crap for that all the time.
I think
It's
in
like,
Brad's
I don't
case,
know where my phone is.
in his case, he probably will answer on Saturday because the weekend for the two of them is all about Mad Inc.
Right.
Monday through Friday,
Oh,
they got day jobs that they're busy with, so I imagine that's why they're not answering. I think in some ways it's the reverse as it is for you, Kelly. I think like everybody's got to have downtime sometime, and I imagine the two of them don't want to talk a damn thing about Mad Inc. on like a Tuesday night because they're tired from like
Well,
their
he prints in the
Well, then maybe he's too busy printing to actually return your call.
Yeah, you
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't like, having met him, I doubt seriously that whenever he does get back to you, it'll be a good conversation, and he'll be passionately all in on the conversation.
I think he's gonna like the idea.
He's definitely all
I,
in.
I think so too.
Okay, I'm
do you-
changing the subject.
Go ahead.
One methodology change that we made a couple of years ago at the SBDC was, I kind of have a pet peeve about business plans. How many of you have written business plans?
I don't recommend them anymore, but I did personally once upon a time.
The problem with business plans is, number one, they're generally written for one or two purposes, and usually to acquire financing, not to use as a managerial tool. But the other thing is that if it's a startup venture, the business plan is generally, when you write a business plan and you take 4 or 5 weeks or 4 or 5 months, it generally is obsolete in about 6 weeks because everything changes. And so you spend all that time and effort and resources, and if you're in a startup business, you're burning cash, which obviously you know by now isn't one of my favorite things to do. So what there's this new methodology that's been out a few years now called the lean startup. And the lean startup takes a different methodology, is where what you do is you go do this business model canvas that essentially is 9 blocks. You talked about this.
I have not talked about it because
He's
I
got-
wanted to get a soft copy of this from you so I could distribute it to the students.
He's got the
I haven't
small
gotten it.
version. We have one almost the size of this screen.
Well, I asked you for that and I don't have it yet.
Come down to the office, I will give it to you.
I'm gonna hand this thing around to you guys. This is a tool I want to include in the class in the future, but,
Oh, this is what they use at Stanford and Cal, Princeton, and a few other places, and soon at CSUD. So essentially, what it does is it's a business plan or business model generation, and so what you're looking to do is to generate your model for your startup. And the premise behind it is that too many small business startups, what they do is they think they know what they're going to do, but then by the time they open their doors, it's changed dramatically. So it kind of came out of the software development industry, being that a lot of people would provide features that really weren't wanted by the customer. And so the first step that we do with clients is we just get the initial idea of those 9 boxes. And the 9 boxes actually later on will translate into a business plan if you need a business plan. So what it does is it just gets your hypothesis of what your business is and what it's going to be. Okay, it's your best guess on what that business is going to be. And you should have it in your head, and it should only take like 45 minutes. Then what you do, and this is the part that our clients love, is you do what we call customer development or customer discovery. And so what you do is you formulate a questionnaire. You don't use focus groups because I'm kind of the opinion that focus groups, what they do is generally, you see a lot of what I call piling on. Is somebody will say something and then somebody tags onto that and somebody tags onto that, and there's not a lot of original thought that goes on after that. And I think by sitting down with one of your customers, especially if it's going to be a good customer or potential customer, and talking to them in depth for 30 or 45 minutes provides you far more information about what you need. And if you do that enough times, if you do that 20, 30, 40 times, you start seeing trends of what's happening and what people really want. And so we've been kind of grown into and grew up on this fundamental that we do market research, which is generally 2 to 3 years old. And we do a lot of market analysis, and a lot of it's very valuable. But a lot of it is stale information that you're using now to base on your business moving forward. So essentially, ideally, what you do is you go talk to 20 or 30, 40 Some people say 100 customers, vendors, suppliers. Like if we were doing something in the restaurant business, it seems like the guy who knows the most about restaurants in town is the guy who drives the Cisco truck. So you talk to him. So you find that in any particular industry.
It's a really good point.
So you find that in whatever industry you're in. You know, there's people in the wedding industry. Who controls the wedding industry? It's the jeweler, because they get the engagement ring. They're at the very front edge. So you find out who that person is and other people like that who are going to be potential customers for you. And you question them, you interview them, and get those trends. And then what you do is you take that information and you see if your original hypothesis, where you are with that. You might need to tweak it mildly. You might need to do what is called a pivot and change it fairly dramatically, and then come back and do the process again. So, you know, time is important for a lot of people, so a lot of people don't see the value in the customer development, the customer discovery, or they've figured out ways to do shortcuts. You know, I made my son do this after he did his Kickstarter campaign. And of course, what does he do? He gets on Facebook about a couple years ago, and he says, hey, I'm thinking about opening a food truck. What would you guys like to see? And he ended up getting 173 responses in 6 pages. And I said, now that's customer discovery. It's not the in-depth stuff that you want, but you see trends that start working their way through. It's not the one-on-one and talking in-depth with individual customers that are going to be your customers, but it's providing you the information on an aggregate basis that you can actually start identifying trends of what people want. There's a couple of other ways for shortcuts, but you know, we usually use an example of a pizza, for example, because you know everybody knows what pizza is. And so even something as basic as pizza, you can get into some really interesting things about what people think about it. Some people, you know, will only dine in. Some people want takeout. Some people want delivery. Some people want take and bake. Some people buy frozen pizzas, and it's just so dynamic that when you start looking at opportunities that are out there, even something as basic as pizza will work in this time frame, in this model. So essentially, it starts with, there's 9 boxes. We start generally with either a problem, if it's a startup. If you're an existing business, we change it slightly to partners, because oftentimes there are partners out there that will make the difference. And we weave through about 9 boxes, cover cost, revenue, key metrics, your channels of distribution and other stuff. And again, this is stuff that if you have your business, if it's a business idea, you can actually identify what it is right away, because you've got it up here. And so that's kind of one of the directions that we've gone, and it seems to work.
One other thing that I wanted to make sure, we got like 18 minutes before 9 o'clock. I got a couple of announcements I have to do, so we probably need to wrap up by at least like 5 till.
Make it 10 till, then I'll beat the traffic.
Okay, there we go. Then we got 8 minutes left, and I know originally I forwarded you information from Draco, from Eric. I can't remember, did anybody else give me information about the SBDC junior consultant thing? You were meaning to meet with them. They're right here, so maybe we should talk a little bit about that.
Yes, you'll probably hear from me tomorrow. It's been Slam City for, well, my entire life, but worse lately. So, I do have a list, and I'm going to be emailing people, and hopefully next week's a good opportunity for people to meet. Middle of the week, probably Wednesday, maybe before class, something like that.
Do you guys have any particular questions while he's sitting here? Anybody, like Traco and Eric, and then in addition to that, like, I think I've described to other people here how our general, like, junior consultant system works and hourly billing, and the goals that the SBDC has of either raising capital or creating and retaining jobs for the, like, if we can make a case that we're gonna raise a lot of capital or retain or grow a lot of jobs, that's what triggers the willingness of our SBDC to you know, free up the relatively limited amount of funds that we have from the SBA. But
We can always see.
I was trying to, I was trying to make things easy for you to say,
Say
you
what?
know, we don't have, we can only do this many hours of the project. I was trying to give you an out there, man. I agree. I think there's lots of money to be had for any kind of projects that we could possibly be working on, right?
So, you know, one of the changes in services, we talked about being a lot of people looking for capital. Another thing that's really changed over the last 6 months or so, maybe 9 months, is we're getting a lot of inquiries on government contracting. And, you know, there's an opportunity, I think, for us, and what we're gonna probably do is we're gonna probably go to bid on what is called a procurement technical assistance center, to where we have part of what the SBDC does just for procurement consulting. For example, China Lake, also known as NOC-WD in Ridgecrest, the Naval Weapons Base. NOC-WD, what does that stand for?
Naval Weapon Base?
Naval Air Warfare Center Weapons Division.
Got it.
Can't believe I remember.
Nice, well done.
So, right now, we're talking with a few contract officers. We'll likely open up a satellite office in Ridgecrest, because right now, NOC-WD out of Ridgecrest does $420 million a year in contracts to certified small businesses. That's not the big government contractors.
Just small businesses.
That is just small business, $420 million a year. And what we're finding is that our Kern County small businesses aren't getting enough of that pie. So we're gonna open up a center and work with more businesses and work with them. I've already talked with a few retired contract officers, and if you start getting into government contracts, boy, I'll tell you, it's its own animal. It's its own animal. And to have somebody who's been on the inside, who's had to play by the rules and tell everybody that comes in the same thing, and then all of a sudden you have that person working with your small business that is up against other businesses, you have a distinct advantage, and that's what we're gonna get. It's like they say up there, you know, we're the Navy, you know, we've never been in a fair fight, and we never plan on being in one. So, we also have Edwards Air Force Base, we have numerous prisons, so there's really an opportunity to do business with the government that we're not fully taking advantage of. And that's really one of our directions and our strategic directions we're moving this year.
I like it. Do you guys have other questions, or do you have something you wanted to cover before your
Plus,
you
when
go, Kelly?
you have a satellite office in Ridgecrest, you can go to Randsburg more often.
This is true. It's right around the corner. And Johannesburg to make the tour of little South Africa.
You can go to Red Mountain too. But you can't go to Trona because that's in San Bernardino County.
Yes.
So questions in our last, how many minutes?
If you want to leave by 10 till, we have 3 minutes.
So are you guys in need of any particular skill set at the development center? Like, are you looking for anything particular as of right now?
For our senior level consultants, we're in need of somebody who can do what is called SBA 8A certification. And that's a contracting certification that's procurement related, that is a very detailed process that allows women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, disabled veteran businesses to have bidder preferences during certain government contracting opportunities. There's only 40 8A contractors in the Fresno SBA district, which is 15 counties. There's only 40 of those, and we've been getting probably 2 inquiries a month the last 6 months. That's rather specified, rather specific. But the nice thing what I like about our associate or junior consulting program is it provides real world experience for our students. And I know what it's like to sit through a classroom. Now, you're an MBA student, so it's not quite as bad. But to sit through a lot of theoretical stuff that really doesn't pertain to the real world. And when you're working with one of our senior level consultants on a particular case, you're working on the real world. But you're not only doing that, you're establishing contacts in the community. You're establishing opportunities for later. You're getting some resume fodder. So, but it's like when I talk to our businesses about the junior consulting program, what I'm telling them is it's the best of both worlds. We have plenty of older, more senior consultants, like say Dr. Woods, and then we have.
Not as old as you, man.
Well, it goes without saying, at least by my part, I wouldn't say it. But then
You're the one that said before, nobody in here
but
is as old as you.
he's got the experience. He's got the experience of working with several businesses over a long period of time. Whereas our junior and associate consultants, what they have is they have a lot of different technical skills that are different. They bring energy. They bring a skill set of knowing a lot more about social media and things like that, and technology driven. Whereas our senior consultants always don't bring those skills to the table. So it's a nice blend of generally experienced and not as experienced, and generally some technical and a lot of technical. And it works really well when you get together those environments in a small business. Did I spend my whole 3 minutes on that?
You did. It's exactly 8:50.
Okay, last question. Jeremy thinks I carry this Wall Street Journal here as a prop.
You
Because
do?
it makes me look smarter, and I always tell him I'm smart enough, I don't need to look any smarter. And besides, it's the best damn paper in the world. So, but now that he's mentioned it, it does make a pretty good prop.
It does. It always looks like you're like
For example,
increasing your knowledge and information.
so normally I love to bring a lovely party gift. And my question would have been today, but I didn't bring a lovely parting gift, was today, what is the price of oil?
Oh, are you talking about Brent or WTI?
I'm talking about whatever they tell me on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
$32.
Oh, no way, we're at $30 and 83 cents Brent. WTI closed at around 28.
Well, you would have been a winner. $27.94. Spoken by somebody in the oil business.
Yeah, he stares at it constantly.
Yeah, that doesn't show at all in the detailed level of your
Hey, he
statement.
still has hair, and it's not gray, so.
No, I think it's great.
Okay, well, thank you all. Good luck.
Thank you.
Kelly, thanks again. Okay, just a couple announcements, and then we're done. Let me turn off the recording first.